Hello, Old School Comics Review. Random issue. This time it's going to be Batman and the Outsiders number 8 from 1983. Okay, this was written by Mike W. Barr, and the art is mostly by Jim Apparel. Mike W. Barr, I basically just know him from this series, Batman and the Outsiders, and I know he also wrote the Batman graphic novel, Son of the Demon from back in the day, which was the story that Grant Morrison is basing a lot of his recent Batman comics on. It's basically a story where Batman hooks up with the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, and they have a son, and so on and so forth. Jim Aparo is a guy who's been with DC. Well, I don't think he's with us anymore, but I know him from the early '80s. I know he was around back in the '70s, and he along with Neil Adams pretty much helped define that particular look for Batman. That is the whole idea of the big sweeping cape, the really elongated ears, the utility belt with the kind of little test tube things going on there. Okay, this story basically guest stars the Phantom Stranger, who's a kind of mysterious occult type character in the DC universe. He basically shows up and says weird and cryptic things and then disappears. So basically, this, what the story's about. Oh, before we get to the story, I think there's a couple of interesting things in here. There's a couple of ads in here for like old video games, stuff like Frogger on the back page. There's an ad for Masters of the Universe video game, and they show some of the graphics here, and they're like really super primitive, one step above asteroids type graphics, and it's just interesting to go back and look at that. A more interesting ad is about a third into it. There's an ad for Garcia fishing poles, and the ad is a drawing of Santa Claus and Spider-Man. Now I'm sure the Garcia people probably at whatever time went to Marvel Comics and say, hey, we want to, use your character, for some advertisements, and, they got the licensing rights or whatever. And then maybe later down the road, I'm sure some guy in an office talked to another guy in an office, somebody talked to uh, someone at Warner Brothers or DC Comics and says, hey, we want to put some ads in your comics this month or whatever, blah blah blah, and somebody said okay, But I just think it's funny. I think it's really ironic that you've got this DC Comics, right, and in the middle of it, there's a big drawing of a character from their biggest competition. I just think it's funny. Okay, the story is basically it's Christmas time, and Batman is more or less investigating his case of missing children and things like that. And the Phantom Stranger keeps appearing and disappearing, saying things like, trust your instincts, trust your feelings, and whatnot. And basically, this leads Batman to be investigating a case that's going on at the hospital, where kids at the hospital, they're kids one moment, then the next moment they've been replaced by shriveled up old people. Ooh. The other outsiders are at the hospital because they're just, giving presents and gifts and toys and things to the sick children there. And basically what we find out is that what's going on, an old enemy of the Phantom Stranger, a wizard or sorcerer or whatever from another dimension, is trying to get back to our dimension. And what he's doing is he's sucking the life force. He's sucking the energy out of kids and babies, to give them the energy to get back to our dimension. So basically, there's a big fight with Batman and the Outsiders teaming up with the Phantom Stranger to fight the evil wizard guy, and of course, justice wins, and the evil guy is dismissed of, and there's a nice little Christmas message, and so on and so forth. This comic's pretty interesting for a few reasons. It's very much old school Silver Age writing. There's not a lot of character development. There's not a lot of building of suspense or anything. Things just kind of happen the way they need to happen. This is very much a just one and done story. There's a couple of funny things in here. At one point, like I said, the outsiders are at the hospital, and the trouble erupts, and they're going to go investigate what's happening. And then they've discovered Batman's has been there all along, and they discover this because Batman has been disguised as a doctor or whatever, and here it is. It goes, one of the heroes says, "You going somewhere, fella?" And then a doctor takes off his face. "With you, Metamorpho," and it's Batman. What's funny about this is the way it's drawn is there's like he's got like a rubber face, a rubber mask on, but it's drawn to look as though he's had this over his Batman mask, with the pointy ears and everything. Another kind of amusing thing is at one point the sorcerer uses his mystic powers to take over the nursery. And he has like babies, attack the heroes. Now these aren't like kids or anything like that. These are like infants. They're babies. They're drawing, they're in diapers and they're drawn crawling across the floor and then attacking the heroes, and they're grabbing Batman's cape, and they're grabbing the arms and things of the other heroes, and they're all like, "Oh no, we can't hurt the children, let's use our powers defensively." And of course they don't hurt any babies or anything like that. My only thing is they're babies. Babies really don't have motor skills. You shouldn't have to like worry about fighting them at all. Just walk to the other side of the room. Problem solved. But anyway, and that's a dumb plan by the wizard anyway. You would either get, adults in the hospital to like attack the heroes, or maybe take the babies hostage. How do you have babies fight people? But anyway, it's pretty interesting. There's really nothing particularly deep about it. It's just a fun little story. There's a little blurb at the end. It says, "Next issue, Masters of Disaster," plus a Halo short story. One interesting thing might be, I saw the Justice League animated thing, the recent thing that just came out, the Crisis on Two Earths story. It's just pretty interesting because in the beginning of the movie, where the Justice League goes to Earth 2 or whatever, and they have a fight with Owlman and some other bad guys. The bad guys are basically evil versions of 80s Batman and the Outsiders and 80s Justice League of Detroit. I just think that's pretty funny, even to the point where there's an evil character. There's an evil version of a character they don't use at DC Comics anymore called Vibe, and he actually goes to the trouble. Somebody actually went to the trouble of having the guy use a pop lock move. That's a breakdance dance move. He's not gesturing his hands because that's how he makes his powers activate. He's actually doing a breakdance move. I just think that's funny. That has nothing to do with anything else other than it being the 80s, and I think it's funny. So anyway, I would say, though, if you're interested, try to find like some old stuff from the 70s that has Jim Apparel art, some of the old Detective comics and some of the old Brave and Bold comics, which are basically Batman team-ups, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Like I said, it's 70s Silver Age DC Comics storytelling, so it's not going to be particularly deep or anything, but if you're open-minded, I think you can have fun with it. Okay, once again, I got to thank you very much. Appreciate you listening to me, and you have a good one.